The smell of burned metal was still thick in the air when I heard it. A sound I did not expect. A sound that made my whole body go still in the middle of a battlefield. Laughter. My baby's laughter. I had been tearing through the wreckage of the crash site for 6 hours, clawing through broken steel and scorched earth, searching for any trace of my hatchlings. The transport ship carrying my brood had been shot down over this human world, and when I finally reached the crash site, the nest chamber was empty. No bodies, no blood, just torn restraints and 3 sets of small claw marks leading away into the dark. I told myself they were alive. I had to believe that, or I would have burned the whole valley to ash right then. Now I stood at the edge of a small human settlement, my wings pressed low against my back to keep from being seen against the moonlight, and I heard them. That unmistakable clicking harmony under their laughter, the joy call only my species makes, the sound a hatchling gives when it feels safe. Safe. My mind could not accept that word. Not here. Not among these creatures my people had hunted across a dozen worlds. Humans were vermin to us, clever and dangerous vermin, but vermin all the same. They caged what they could not kill. They studied what they feared. If my babies were laughing inside a human house, it meant only one thing to me. They were being kept, toyed with, broken down piece by piece for some human scientist's curiosity. My claws dug into the dirt. I moved low across the field, past a wooden fence, past a row of sleeping vehicles, until I reached the small house at the very edge of the settlement. Warm light spilled from its windows, and there it was again, that laughter. Closer now, real. I did not wait. I did not think. I threw myself against the door, and it gave way like paper, wood splintering across the floor, and I rose to my full height inside a room far too small for me, ready to burn everything that breathed inside it. What I found stopped the fire in my throat before it ever left me. A single human sat cross-legged on the floor. No weapon, no cage, no wires or tubes or metal restraints. Just a man, maybe 30 years old, wrapped in a blanket that had 3 small shapes tangled inside it, all 3 of them pressed against his chest like he was their nest. My hatchlings. Alive, whole, and staring at me with wide golden eyes that held no fear at all. The human looked up at me, and I expected him to scream, to run, to reach for some hidden weapon. Instead, he let out a long breath, like a man setting down something heavy, and said, quiet and tired, "Oh good, you found us." They wouldn't stop crying for their mother. I didn't know how to explain to a baby dragon that help was on the way. I did not move. I did not know how to move. My mind was built for war, for judgment, for the swift end of anything that threatened my brood, and none of my training had prepared me for this. A human, alone, sitting on the floor of his own home with my children curled around him like they belonged there. One of them, the smallest, the one I called Ember for the color of her scales, lifted her head and made a soft chirping sound toward me. Then she turned back to the human and nuzzled into his arm like he was safety itself. My claws were still raised, my jaw still burned with the heat I had gathered to end this man's life the moment I understood what I was looking at. But something in me held back. Some old instinct, older than war, told me to look closer before I acted. So I looked. The blankets around them were folded and layered the way my own kind builds a nest, though clumsily, like someone who had never seen a real one and only guessed at the shape from memory or story. There was a bowl beside him, empty now, with the faint smell of cooked meat still clinging to the air. One of my sons, the one with the torn wing membrane from the crash, had a strip of soft cloth wrapped carefully around the wound, tied with more care than skill, but tied all the same. He had fed them. He had tended their wounds. He had built them a nest with his own hands out of blankets meant for a human bed. I lowered my head slightly, not in submission, not yet, but enough to look him directly in the eyes without towering over him like a blade about to fall. "Why?" I asked him, my voice a low rumble that shook the small room. "Why would you do this? You knew what they were. You knew what I am. Any other of your kind would have called for weapons the moment they saw claws like these." He did not flinch from my voice, though I saw his hands tighten slightly around the blanket, pulling my children a little closer, not away. "I found them in the field behind my house 3 nights ago," he said. "Half buried under wreckage, crying like any scared kid cries when they're lost and hurt and don't know where their parents went. I didn't stop to think about what species they were. I just saw 3 kids who needed help. You don't leave kids out in a storm. Doesn't matter whose kids they are. The words landed somewhere deep in me, somewhere I did not know still existed after centuries of war. My people had taught me, from the moment I hatched, that humans thought only of themselves, that they took what they wanted and discarded the rest, that kindness from them was either a lie or a weakness to be exploited. I had believed it because I had never been given a reason not to. But vermin do not sit awake for 3 nights tending wounds they do not understand. Vermin do not build clumsy nests out of blankets. Vermin do not hold frightened hatchlings through the night, just because those hatchlings were crying. Ember climbed out of the blanket and made her way across the floor toward me, her small claws clicking against the wood, and behind her came her brothers, Rook and Talon, both moving slower, still stiff from their injuries, but moving all the same. They reached me and pressed against my legs, chirping happily, the joy call rising again, and this time, it did not sound strange in this house. It sounded like it belonged there. I looked past my children to the man still sitting on the floor. He had not moved to stop them from coming to me. He had not tried to keep them for himself. There was no fear in his eyes when he looked at me, only exhaustion, and beneath that exhaustion, something that looked almost like relief. I thought you might not come back for them, he admitted quietly. I didn't know how long I could keep them fed and safe if you didn't. I'm not exactly equipped to raise baby dragons. The word he used, dragons, was not one my people used for ourselves, but I understood the meaning behind it, and for the first time in longer than I could remember, I felt something close to gratitude toward a member of a species I had been raised to despise. I lowered myself fully then, my great head coming down to the level of his, a gesture that meant something sacred among my kind, a gesture we only gave to those we owed a debt too large to measure. He did not understand what it meant. I could see that in his confused expression, but he understood enough to know it was not a threat. You did not have to do any of this, I told him. You could have called others of your kind. You could have handed them over to be studied, or worse. Instead, you fed them. You tended their wounds. You held them through their fear. He shrugged, like it was the simplest thing in the world, like there was no other choice a person could have made. They were scared, he said again. That's all I needed to know. Ember pressed her small head against his hand one last time before turning back to me, and I felt the weight of everything my people believed about humans begin to crack apart inside my chest. We had called them vermin. We had called them dangerous, selfish, unworthy of trust. And yet here, in this small broken house with its splintered door, one human man had given 3 days of his life, without hesitation, without asking anything in return, to keep 3 frightened hatchlings alive. I did not know what this meant for the war between our people. I did not know if this one man's kindness could undo generations of hatred on either side, but I knew that I could not leave this house the same creature I had been when I broke through that door. Before I go, I told him, know that you have done something few of your kind, or mine, would ever do. You showed mercy to something that could have destroyed you without a second thought, and you asked for nothing in return. He smiled then, tired but genuine, and reached out to scratch gently under Rook's chin, earning another burst of that clicking laughter that had brought me to this house in the first place. I just did what felt right, he said. I guess I'm glad it worked out. I gathered my hatchlings close, wrapping them carefully within the curve of my wings, and I paused at the broken doorway to look back at him one final time. The moonlight caught his tired face, the blankets still tangled around him, the empty bowl, the small proof of a kindness that asked for nothing. We were taught that your kind could not be trusted, I said quietly, that you were cruel and selfish and beneath our notice. I believed it because I had no reason to question it, but vermin do not sing to frightened hatchlings through the night. Vermin do not bandage wings they do not understand. I came to your house tonight, ready to burn it to the ground. I am leaving it wondering how much else my people have gotten wrong about yours. He did not answer right away. He only nodded, slow and thoughtful, like a man who understood he had just been part of something larger than himself, something that might ripple far beyond this one small house at the edge of a quiet human settlement. I stepped out into the night with my children safe against me, their laughter still echoing behind us, and for the first time since the war began, I found myself wondering if peace might not be as impossible as I had always believed.